the whole goal of the film is to give someone, the outline of the puzzle, just the borders. I can't fill in all the details. I mean, no one knows Bitcoin completely. I can't fill all the details in 90 minutes, but I hope to give them the overview so that they have that internal pull to want to learn more. Like we've all had at some point, orange pilling, you can trip someone down the rabbit hole, but it's got to come from inside for them to really get it. So that's the plan, to go through all of those things and explain it as simply as possible. Simple terms, let everybody grab onto it. And I really think I can make a dent in this world, man. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Bitcoin month here in El Salvador, and we have a shooter came in early to the studio and is gonna tell us about the things that he has in the hopper. For those of you who are wondering what he's done in the past, the ComeBack Country was about El Salvador, which I love the title. I mean, that kind of title, it kind of makes itself. I'm sure it was like popped in first time you heard it. So did you come up with that? Somebody give that to you, or what was the?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I came up with it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if someone else gave it to me. Then definitely let me know so I can give them credit. But yeah, 2 C's, ComeBack and Country, and everybody I talked to was talking about here in El Salvador how excited they were that people were coming back. So it makes total sense. I think it really summarizes what's happening in El Salvador.
No, you just spit out the title and
ComeBack Country.
I know what it's about.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us, how did you get into Bitcoin, and then how did that bring you here to El Salvador?
Yeah, absolutely. So my brother actually was the one that turned me on to Bitcoin a few years back.
Older, younger?
Older brother.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe the smartest guy I know, Okay. And so that was great because there was a lot of trust there, right? And in Bitcoin, you learn later not to trust, but I trust my brother, and
family,
exactly, yeah. And you don't always trust family, maybe, but like in this particular case, he's one of the smartest people I know, and so luckily, he explained it to me and really made it clear that it was Bitcoin only, and so fortunately, I never got caught up in any of the the other coins or anything like that, and really put me on the path. But yeah, he put me on the path, and then I listened to basically pretty much everything Max Keiser ever put out. And it really resonated with me because I was learning about the problems and the effects of fiat money for the first time. And I was upset, because it's just so awful. And so Max's emotional responses and him, however much is real and however much is a little bit of a show, it totally resonated with me. I felt that was the proper response for anybody who's speaking about these things that are happening. So just went down the rabbit hole real deep, and Max really helped solidify it in my brain how it works a little bit better and how the fiat is messing things up. So that's how I got into Bitcoin, and fortunately Max and Stacy were the first ones that I did any Bitcoin film work for too.
Okay, so he was kind of the first person you were watching or listening to educate you, but then also played a role in you getting down to El Salvador.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Max did these Elon shows after Bitcoin 2021 in Miami, and he did his first show in Austin, and I bought a ticket for it. And at this time, they were doing those Orange Pill podcasts, and they were streaming live often, and I would always tune in, right? And they were streaming one time, and I sent them a message in the live chat just saying, I'm going to be there. I got cameras. If you don't have anybody that's going to film it, I'll film it for free. And, she saw it, and I got to find the live stream because it's still there, right? Like, hey, oh, let's...
Stacy saw it.
Yeah, Stacy saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, let's contact me, and we'll do it. So, so I met up with them out there, and before the show, actually, Stacy was doing a tour of the Rhodium mine out there. It's a Bitcoin mine. Shout out Marshall Long. I hung out with him a bit recently too, and I like that guy a lot. Super OG miner. So that was cool. I saw my first Bitcoin mine and I got to film it. And then I filmed the show, and they did another show in Phoenix about a month and a half later. And then on another live.
And you went to that one also?
I did do that one too.
Okay.
I filmed that one too. And then they said they were going to go to El Salvador. And I reached out to Stacy saying, okay, let's go to El Salvador, right? And so, so I came along with them. We filmed some Keiser reports
So
here.
how scared was she to come down here?
No, I think like we were all a little nervous, I think. And I didn't talk to her a whole lot before coming down. But afterwards, and for me too, my girlfriend specifically threatened to leave me if I went because she was going to be so worried about it, And I was just like, this is like historic. And, this is a great opportunity. And I want to go down there and I want to see what's going on. And I jumped through a bunch of hoops to get to El Salvador. My passport was expired, and this is COVID. And the closest appointment to me to get my passport in time was in Texas from California. I had to fly from California to Texas. And the only appointment was the day before my flight to El Salvador. And they're like, we're not sure for sure you're going to get it that day, So I did all of that. And anyway, I got to El Salvador and we filmed another show here, and I met the people here. And I heard a little bit of the history, and it just really, really inspired me. And when I got back home, I realized I couldn't stop thinking about it. And whenever that happens with me, I just have to produce something. I have to get my thoughts together, and I have to create something. Otherwise, it just swirls in my brain and swirls in my brain and swirls in my brain. So, I've been doing filmmaking for a living for 15 years, short films for businesses, storytelling. You don't know it's an ad until the very end. It's just a story pulling you in. And so I did this El Salvador film, ComeBack Country, while I was doing all my regular work. And so November 30th.
So it was just a side project because it's a great film.
Thank you. Yeah. It was just a side project on my own time and on my own dime. It didn't raise any money, nothing like that at all. I just was infected. I couldn't. I needed to do it, dude.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I couldn't think. And so that was a year ago. I published it on September 30th, which is the anniversary of when Clinton signed the Immigration Act in 1994. Okay. Was on September 30th. Which sent all these, all the criminals back here, basically. And so a couple days later, President Bukele is retweeting it and followed me. And then since then, things just really started to pick up. I sent the film to friends, good friends, and they hadn't watched it until Bukele retweeted it, of course, right? And then everybody's watched it like, oh, yeah, it's actually pretty good. So that was really the catalyst. And that really put me on the path I'm on now, making this film that I'm working on right now, which is about inflation and Bitcoin. And I'm traveling to, 10, 12 different countries to try to really explain to normies what it looks like when inflation gets bad, why it's happening, where the money's going, how it's always happened to every money in history, and why Bitcoin can't be inflated.
So is this kind of like the ComeBack Country, that it's kind of something you felt you need to get out there, that it's just swirling around in your head and has to be done?
Yeah. Again, the encouragement I got after that film from the Bitcoin community and the Bitcoiners I know to, hey, why don't you plan and try to raise money to make a film? That really made it a possibility for me. I always made short films. I never thought about a long film. And even the ComeBack Country at the time, the 10 minutes was the longest film I've ever made. But then when I started thinking about that, then I started thinking, okay, if I were to do this, what is the absolutely most impactful thing I could possibly do? And of course, it had to be Bitcoin related. I firmly believe Bitcoin is what the world needs most right now, and everybody knows it, feels it, but they just don't know that. They feel the inflation, but they don't know how bad money makes, bad money makes things. So I knew it had to be related to Bitcoin. But just like with the El Salvador film, Bitcoin is in my El Salvador film, ComeBack Country, but it's not a Bitcoin film. It's an El Salvador film. And in the same way, I didn't want to lead my film with Bitcoin because I felt like some people have preconceived notions about it. And if I start with Bitcoin, I might lose a good amount of people right off the bat. So I was like, okay, what's my entry? What's my angle? And I wanted the most relatable thing possible. And inflation was just a no-brainer. I was working through it, and even when people would ask me, what are you working on? Just random strangers or friends, I'm working on a film about Bitcoin. Oh, okay. But as soon as I started telling people I'm working on a film about inflation, bingo, that's when everybody, really? Okay, so what are you doing exactly? What are you explaining exactly? Why is it happening? Oh man, I'm really feeling it. People, I have a family. Like, then I started to see, okay, this is the path in inflation. Everybody feels inflation, but they don't understand it. So if I can explain simply why it's happening and what it looks like in different places around the world to live with different intensities of inflation, I think we can wake up a lot of people. So yeah, so that was the plan. That's why, it was just seemed like the most impactful and most relatable thing I could possibly do.
It's still crazy for me that this is such a mainstream thing now, because for forever it seemed like people were like, inflation's dead, or it's not. At least in the U.S., it was always seen as that's a problem in third world countries that are kind of going down the tubes, and for it to be something that's a mainstream concern in the U.S. even now is, it's been quite the turnaround. I think it's always been lurking there. They've always hidden it. People haven't, they have this sense of that they're falling behind, but they can't put a finger on it because they massage everything to look like it's not that big of a deal. But they couldn't hide what was happening during COVID and the mass amount of money printing that went on. And so I love you have perfect timing. I definitely think there'll be a ton of people interested. But how do you explain that to people, especially people that are not Bitcoiners? They're maybe not very financially focused or think about those things. How do you describe inflation to people?
Yeah, everything's got to be very simple, in my opinion. I was homeschooled growing up, and when I was about 12 years old, my mother, who was my teacher, she wasn't a teacher by trade, and she couldn't read the science books and understand what was going on. So her methodology was that I had to read the books and I had to explain it to her simply. And if I couldn't explain it to her simply, then I didn't understand it, right? And
I love that.
Genius. I'm going to say the best thing that ever happened in my whole life, because it made me learn how to learn. Yeah. And also learn how to distill things also for myself and for other people. And what I noticed when I would explain things to my mom, if there was one term that I used that she didn't understand, she would be lost. And so it's really a matter of breaking things down in simple terms that everyone can understand. So when it comes to inflation with people, I like to keep it very simple. I tell them there may be multiple factors, but the biggest one is just the money printing. They're just printing more and more and more dollars. There was 300 billion in 1960. There's like 38 trillion now. That's more than 100 times more dollars. And that's what's making everything cost more. Like an apple 100 years ago used to cost a penny, Surely we have better technology. We are more efficient at growing and harvesting apples. Why is it more expensive? It doesn't take more time. So the only answer is the money. They're printed more money. And so since there's more of these dollars, each one is worth less.
And do people get that? Because I find that when I'm trying to explain it to people, to me, it makes perfect sense. Like you're just taking the same amount of value. It's like taking the same pizza and you're just cutting it up into more pieces. And so everyone's going to have less value to it. But I find when I try to explain money printing to people, it just doesn't, I don't know. I don't do a very good job at it.
Yeah, I think maybe because things definitely have changed. Like you said, in the US, people are talking about inflation. They're thinking about inflation. Most of my conversations don't even go past that. When I say it's because they're printing money, they say, yeah, I know. They know they're printing money. They know they're sending money to all these different places and COVID.
But do they
stimulus.
know what that means? How that's like devaluing the existing money? Do they?
It seems like when I say the more you make, the less each one is worth, they accept that. It's just accepted. I don't necessarily have to explain it further than that, because explaining it further than that is a little weird too, right? I mean, it's just things that are abundant are worth less,
Yeah, but I feel like even specifically with money, it's like, if there's more houses in an area, then the price of the houses might go down because there's more supply than demand. But money is literally like the measuring element. And so if you double it, it's literally worth half. Where if you double the amount of homes, maybe they go down a little bit. So I feel like most people just miss that component, that you're you're literally just chopping it up into more pieces.
Right. Yeah. Again, fortunately, I think again, nobody really knows how inflation works, but they feel it, right?
Yeah.
If I say, man, inflation's crazy, huh? They're like, yeah, it's crazy. And so I think in the same way, if they'll accept that statement at face value of, look, when they print more, it makes all the rest of them worth less. And the more they print, the less it's worth. It does not take more work to make an apple. It takes less work. Why does it cost more? Because these things, these paper bills are worth less. Why are they worth less? Because there's a lot more of them. And so, yeah, usually that clicks for people. But yeah, like you're saying though, it is really, the money represents all the value, the wealth, the actual things in the world. And when you create more money, yeah, you're diluting that. It's going to cost you more money for that same house. So maybe it's a turning point now, but when I explain it that way, with the apples and the dollars and, every new one makes yours worth less, they get that. And that's really the focus of the film, right? Because, and that's the working title for the film right now is No More Inflation. And in my mind, that's what Bitcoin promises, Yeah, there's the halving and there's mining and technically more supplies coming in. But at the end of the day, there's only going to be 21 million and no one can create more. And it's this printing that is causing all of this and the ability to print. It's just too tempting for human beings, target inflation of 2%. Come on. I mean, if there's an emergency or there's some good reason to print more and there's the ability to do it, it just happens. It always has. So yeah, the film is really going to show that this is the problem. It's all this money printing. This is what it looks like in the US. This is what it looks like in Jamaica with double the inflation rate. This is what it looks like in Argentina, where it's really crazy. And then Zimbabwe, where it's absolutely insane. And the second component of the film is to show where this money is going, right? How it's affecting food and healthcare and education and war and the stuff the IMF does. So I think, when people start to see what life is going to be like, because it's inevitable, in my opinion, for the dollar, every money always inflates. So I went to Jamaica, people are skipping meals, I went to Argentina, people have friends that are eating out of the trash. I haven't been to Zimbabwe yet, so we'll see what that looks like. But in my mind, and what people are telling me there is, that's your future in the US, this is what happens to money. So yeah, I think people will grab onto that, hearing from regular people about living with inflation.
Since my daughter just started university and she's going to the same school that I went to. And so I was just curious as to how much is it inflated? And I think when I was there, it was $20,000 a year. And now it's like 70 odd thousand a year. And I put in in those calculators, we can say in 1993, $20,000 would be worth this much today. And it said 40,000. So it's you're seeing things like that. Even when you're including the inflation, it's not capturing what the reality is. I mean, it was almost double what it said it should have been, just based on those days' dollars. So
and the quality's worse. Yeah. It's not even the same product, right? When you went to college, I'm sure, I would imagine you got a better education. You might have left with more skills and more tools to actually do what you're promised, which is have a good living, right? That's why everybody goes to college for the most part, unless you really want to be a lawyer or a doctor or there's something passionate. But usually it's go to college so you can get a good job so that you can, have a family. Yeah. But you're saying it's more now and it's less quality. And it's the same thing with everything, with steaks, you can buy a steak. It's more expensive now, but that cow wasn't grass-fed. That cow wasn't on a pasture. That cow was stuffed in a pen with a bunch of other cows. So if you actually went quality for quality, apples to apples, the cost would be even crazier. Yeah. So yeah, it's absolutely wild. I mean, and again, it happened to every money in human history, So.
But it's weird, though, because when you try to talk to most Americans about this, yes, they're complaining, they're seeing the prices now, but they think you're kind of a conspiracy theorist if you think the dollar is going to go away or that it's going to hyperinflate like that. So how do you feel like using film is going to better be able to portray this to people and help them understand how big of an issue this is?
Well, the thing with the dollar is it's already collapsed multiple times, right? So it's funny to think that a thing can't happen that's happened 2 or 3 times before. And so for that particular aspect, I'm going to be sourcing like journals and personal accounts from these times. So like a Great Depression, Weimar Germany, and the fall of Rome, and animate these personal stories so that people can kind of see what it would be like, because it's absolutely horrendous, So hopefully that's enough for them to see, that every money has collapsed, and at a certain point when you've printed too much, there's no going back. There's no fixing it. They have to keep printing. They print because they as the government, I guess, and there's banks and the Fed, and I don't like to complicate it that much.
Yeah.
What happens is the government is like a business. Their income is taxes, and their expenses are what they spend their money on. They want to spend more than their income, so they print money. And now that they have all this debt and all this interest they have to pay back, they have to keep printing the money.
But it's crazy how they've gaslighted us. I remember even, I was an economics major, and I remember them like being taught that, 2% inflation was good, that you didn't want zero inflation. You wanted some inflation because otherwise things get stuck and wages aren't going to be flexible. And, so you need this kind of constant inflation. And I kind of bought it at that time. Like I was like, oh, that sounds somewhat reasonable. And I was somebody who like always questioned everything, but so I feel like it's really taken it spiraling out of control for people to really start questioning, like, why would we want any inflation? Like it's.
Yeah. And people that say that too, I'll give them the 2% argument. Let's say, fine, for the sake of argument, let's just agree 2% is the most ideal. The problem is when you have the ability to inflate, it always gets abused. Even if 2% is good, who do we trust to maintain the 2%? How do we measure it? Who measures it? Your job can't be to measure it and also take actions to fix it. So it comes back to this human problem. It's too tempting. If you gave me a money printer for my bedroom, I'd probably use it at some point. I probably would use it. Even me as I am now, definitely 10 years ago, I would have used it 100,000%. But I just think that thing is too tempting. So people say 2%, I say that may be the case, but there's no way of enforcing that. So why don't we try no inflation for a bit? Let's just go back to a world where it makes more sense to save. And people talk about the reason why is they want to, they fear a loss of productivity, right? If you don't incentivize people to spend their money, they're not going to spend their money, and then the economy is going to go to a standstill, and then no one is going to have any business. But if you actually are incentivized to save, you're more careful with your money. You buy things that you actually really need. And look at our society now, especially in the US, like how many jobs are worthless? Like mortgage brokers, accountants, bankers, all this Wall Street stuff. Like they don't actually produce anything, So I would argue that on sound money, we are more productive because we're doing things that are more meaningful. Maybe more people would work in agriculture or ranching or farming. And that's great. We should have better food. Food is super important. We should have better houses. It's super important. Better schools. I feel like that's what's happened with the money printing is we've lost the focus on the really important things. And somehow the economists try to sell us that, well, if we don't have inflation and we're not making computers and we're not, doing all of this busy work, that's going to be worse. No, it would make us refocus on the important things. So, yeah, the 2% thing, I don't know. Justifying 2% of stealing, let me steal 2% of your money every year. It's good for you, I don't know about all that.
Well, I think some of it comes down to the terminology that they use. I think if you just told people, hey, the government's going to have a 2% tax on all your wealth every year, then they would look at it differently. But they've been convinced that and it's so insidious because then the way you pay capital gains taxes, you can have something that hasn't really gone up in real terms, but then when you sell it, you have to pay a bunch of taxes on it because it's gone up in inflated terms. all these different ways that it, saps the life out of people. And that's why I think people feel like they're stuck on this hamster wheel and falling behind.
They are. Yeah, they absolutely are. I mean, they are on the hamster wheel. I know plenty of people in LA that are living month to month. I don't know how they're still doing it. I don't know how long they're going to keep being able to do it, but we'll see how that happens. But like you were saying with real estate too, people think they feel like they're rich, right? When they have a house and it goes up in value over a certain number of years. But the reality is, if you want to buy a house, similar house, that house has gone up in price too.
Yeah.
All you're doing now is just paying more property taxes. So it's a scam, man. It's a whole scam, It's
funny because people think that, I'll have people say like, oh, you're just into Bitcoin because you want to get rich. I'm like, actually, I understood the fiat system. I knew the tricks and it worked really well for me, but I saw how unfair it was, that just by financial engineering and being able to structure different things in certain ways or get government contracts and those things, that you could get very wealthy. But I saw tons of other people working hard, being productive, that were falling behind. So for me, it was more of a sense of like, yeah, I figured out the tricks of how to make this work, but it's not beneficial for society. And I think that's the way it is with a lot of Bitcoiners. There's a lot of Bitcoiners that came from finance and places where they were making a ton of money, and now they've switched and they're making much less, but they know what they were a part of before. It just wasn't honest money. So
yeah, it reminds me of Argentina. So I've gone to Argentina for this film about inflation. I was there in May. Oh, actually, yeah, this is a good time for this. I brought a gift for you. This is 100 Argentine peso bills.
So
I think about
10,000.
Yes. 10,000 Argentine pesos. About 20 years ago, this was dollar for dollar parity. So each one of these was worth $100. When I was there, in June or May, this was worth about 13 cents. I think now it's worth about 5 cents, each one of these bills. So I was getting 500 pesos for every dollar when I was there, and now it's over 1,000 4 months later. And this is yours, by the way. You can, for the Hope House or the kids or whatever, when people see that money, it does something. When they realize that this is just junk.
Well, I think, what is it that's the largest bill that they have in Argentina?
I think they have a 10,000 now. They just did a new one recently,
okay.
10,000, which still is not very much.
I think when we were there, the biggest one they had, because we were there, it was almost exactly a year ago, and I think the largest they had was 1,000. Right. And we went to dinner. We took a bunch of people from Hope House and Bitcoin Beach, and so we had a group of like 15 of us. We went to a steakhouse. It was reasonable. It was like, I don't know, the equivalent of $15 a person. But with that big of a group and their biggest bill being worth like $3, I had to and if you pay with credit cards, you get kind of ripped off because you get the official rate instead of the black market rate. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to bring all the cash I need to just pay the bill here. It's insane.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. That happened, every time I went to dinner with any number of people. Yeah. It's like, just a huge fan of cash. It's crazy. Yeah. But like you were saying, how you knew how the system worked, the fiat system worked, but you just weren't happy with, playing and taking advantage of it. I felt the same way in Argentina. It was great to be there and have everything be so cheap. Like you said, I got a big steak and a couple glasses of wine for $15, $12 maybe, and with a tip. I'm sure it was cheaper for me than it was for you, right? Because inflation's gotten worse. And at the same time I'm there, I'm interviewing regular people who most of them are working for pesos, and hearing how their lives are changing and how much less they're making in real terms. They're making 10 times more pesos, but 1/3, they're able to buy 1/3 less. It's 1/3 less in terms of dollars.
Well, the minimum wage in Argentina is much lower than it is in El Salvador. And it was historically a very wealthy country. I mean, you go there, you can see the wealth and the natural resources, but these people are making less than even in El Salvador, which is, would historically be considered much lower on the economic, totem pole. And so
I had this weird feeling where every time I got a bill that was cheap, I was happy for a second, and then I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. This feels weird because I know there's no free lunch. I know that I can just benefit from this and no one is paying the price. It's all these people that I've been interviewing that are paying the price. If this gets cheaper for me, it means they're making less money. And so when people ask me like what I thought about Argentina, I would say it's like a dream. It's not real, you know. People like it because it's cheap and because like the food's good and everything like that, but it's not supposed to be like that. You're benefiting from this system because you have dollars, period. And the people that live there that have remote jobs or get paid in dollars, they also live like kings too, kings and queens. But everyone else pays the price. So yeah, like, I don't know. I don't even know if I want to go back to Argentina because I want to support those people, but I don't want to take advantage of the people. And I just felt like I was taking advantage of the people, you know? So, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying about even if you can play the game and win that game at a certain point, it's like, for what? You know, at the expense of these people? Really? Is it worth that, you know? So, yeah, Argentina was intense. Jamaica was a bit intense too. I went to Jamaica a month before that. Their inflation isn't quite as high.
But they do have high inflation.
They do have high inflation. Okay. And people are skipping meals in Argentina. If they have...
In Jamaica?
I'm sorry, in Jamaica, rather. You know, if they have 2 meals a day, it's a treat. But the next day, it's just 1 meal for sure, you know. They have kids. For sure the kids eat. But they're constantly working. Everybody does everything. They're an Uber driver. They're a tour guide. They're a makeup artist. They're a producer. And... yeah, they're really struggling out there, and it's just getting started. You know, like it's just everywhere. It's just getting started. So
lay out for us the movie script. Like, what is do you set out the problem first, and then just go visit all of these countries and show the way it's impacting lives, or how does that? How do you work through it? Yeah,
so it's really broken down to like 4 chapters. It's one film, but it's like 4 chapters. And the first one is to show what life is like with different intensities of inflation, right? Show the suffering, because I think inflation causes the most suffering in the world. I mean, if you want to add up like the war, obviously, of course, right? Because being able to print money makes it much easier to pay for war. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they would have to come to us to collect tax and convince us, say, you know, hey, Mike, please give us some money. We want to drop some bombs over here. And we would have the opportunity, essentially a vote at that time to say, okay, yes, we agree we need to do this, or no, we don't want to do this. So, but even outside of that, just the financial stress that common people have, making it by getting enough food, having a place to live, worrying about their kids' education. I think that stress, if you add it all up in the whole world, is probably the most suffering. Okay, so first chapter is to show what life is like under these different conditions. The second chapter is to show where the printed money is going, right? To explain that it's the reason is printed money. Okay, this is how much more they've printed in this many places and from this time to this time, and specifically for each country, I'll show the money supply. You know, Jamaica, this is where it's gone from 1960 to now. Argentina, and so on. Zimbabwe, so you can see the money supply changing too. But yes, so the second part is that and where that money is going, right? How it affects your food, how it affects your education, how it affects your healthcare, how it affects war, and what the IMF does with entire countries, basically. So that's chapter 2. Chapter 3 is, well, what happens next, right? Surely things just can't keep getting more expensive, right? But sadly, yes, that is what happens, and it's what's happened during the Great Depression. And it's what happened in Weimar Germany, and it's what's happened in Rome when they were debasing and clipping their coins. It's worse than a nightmare. I mean, if you read the book about Weimar Germany, when money dies, the things that people were doing to survive, to feed their babies. At one point, you know, all the furniture in your house may be worth a sack of potatoes. So it gets worse than a nightmare. So the first 3 chapters should really be a black pill. You know, they should be worried that things are bad. And they're getting worse. And like gravity, it's just always what happens, it seems, with money. It just, until everybody's poor, until it's a nightmare. Then we'll bring in a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of hope, which is we'll introduce Bitcoin. and why it can't be inflated, why it can't be censored, why it can't be shut down, and why it can't be confiscated. These things will be animated at the most basic explanation as possible. Like, for example, Bitcoin can't be inflated because anybody can have a copy of the records. So if anybody tried to say, hey, there's 1 million more Bitcoin, all the record holders could see that and say, no, we have the records. That's not Bitcoin. Versus the bank, who they're the only ones that have the records. So we don't know if they create more money or they add more money into an account. So
what's crazy how like 99.9% of people don't even understand how banks create money and how the banking system actually works. If people did, I think they'd be furious, but it's so bizarre. It's this open secret, but people just go on without even understanding.
It's a Henry Ford quote, isn't it? He said, if the American people understood the banking system, there would be a revolution in the street tomorrow. And again, in my mind, it's as simple as when you keep score and you're keeping track of how much money's in an account, you can literally just take a pen and say, and this account now has this much money. And it's that simple because who's watching you? It's like you're playing a basketball game against another team and the other team is keeping score. And no one oversees them.
Yeah.
You're never going to win. You're never, ever, 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 ever going to win. And so that's what it really comes down to in my mind in terms of inflation. Bitcoin can't be inflated because we can all have the records versus just they have the records. Bitcoin can't be confiscated because when you process a transaction, it's a competition for who's going to get to process that transaction instead of trusting one group, a bank, to approve or deny it, confiscated, right? Your Bitcoin, if you do it right, you have your password, your key, and it's your 12 words or your 24 words, and that opens your Bitcoin box, and you're the only one that can move it, right? You leave it on FTX, your Bitcoin is in their box, right? And that's what happened. People said, hey, would you please move my Bitcoin from your box to my box? And they said, sorry, it's not there anymore. And shut down, right? Same deal. These people that have the records have Bitcoin installed on their computers. They're all over the world. To shut down Bitcoin, you'd have to shut down all of them. So that's the fourth chapter will explain those in an animation. So it's very visual and easy for people to comprehend. And the final part of the film will be to tackle some of the FUD that people have heard, right? A lot of people think Bitcoin's boiling the oceans. If you want to pull up the Kenya clip the Kenya clip, this isn't exactly... So in Kenya, Gridless is doing some Bitcoin mining out there. And what it's doing is it's providing electricity for people in Africa for the first time. This was a fun thing I got to do. I went on safari out there. Never been on safari before. And I got to shoot some of these animals. So it's super awesome. But in the film, what you'll see is my interview with locals who were getting electricity for the first time there and what that means to go from 0 to 1. And a farmer, instead of spending 2 or 3 hours chopping food for his cows with a machete, now has a machine that does it in 10 minutes. Now he can start a welding business. Now he wants to grow his family. A mother whose kids couldn't study well because they were complaining about the kerosene burning their eyes because that's what they were using, kerosene candles, now has a light bulb. So they're studying better. Simple things, but life-changing things. By all standards, these people are dirt poor. Literally, the ground is dirt.
Yeah.
But they're the happiest people I met. And the reason why this is happening is because Gridless is dropping shipping containers filled with miners next to rural power plants. This power plant was only selling 40% of their energy. And they came in and bought up all the excess energy. Now that power plant company is much more profitable, and they're literally putting more poles in the ground and connecting more houses to electricity for the first time. And that same company has assessed 90 other sites, 90 other sites that they disqualified just because the initial demand in these rural areas wouldn't make it profitable to do because these people never had electricity before. What are they going to use it with? So now with this Bitcoin mining, it's opening up all of that. And there's 400 or 500 million.
They have that demand from the get-go, and then they can phase out and move their miners somewhere else when the natural demand meets the supply.
That's exactly what they're doing. And it's most important for investors, right? Before, they couldn't prove to the investors how they were going to pay it back, but now they can. So again, that's really, I'm covering that to tackle the energy FUD, right? You may have heard Bitcoin's boiling the oceans, but have you heard Bitcoin is bringing electricity to people for the first time? Have you heard that it's capping these flares in these Native American sovereign lands where people were literally getting poisoned by this flares? It's poisonous in the air. And, biowaste happening in Mexico, right? The methane's bad, right? These cow farts and everything, right? Okay, it's capturing that, and it's using that energy. So we'll cover that FUD. Bitcoin's a scam. It's too volatile. CBDCs are going to destroy Bitcoin. So that's what towards the end of the film will be, is to address that FUD a bit, and we'll end looking at sound money history, like the Renaissance in Florence, like what humanity is capable of when we have good money, and we'll imagine what the future will look like with good money. And the whole goal of the film is to give someone, the outline of the puzzle, just the borders. I can't fill in all the details. I mean, no one knows Bitcoin completely. I can't fill all the details in 90 minutes, but I hope to give them the overview so that they have that internal pull to want to learn more. Like we've all had at some point, orange pilling, you can trip someone down the rabbit hole, but it's got to come from inside for them to really get it. So that's the plan, to go through all of those things and explain it as simply as possible. Simple terms, let everybody grab onto it. And I really think I can make a dent in this world, man. So that's what I'm trying to do.
And I think you have kind of an innovative way that you're financing this film, and possibly there's people out there listening to this that would want to be part of something that I think could literally change the trajectory of the world. So give them the spiel for how they can be a part of it.
I appreciate the alley-oop. So what I've done is I've broken the budget for the film down into 20 slots. So there'll be 20 investors. I have 13 so far. So there's 7 slots left. And the 20 investors...
Which that's super impressive. You already have 13.
Thank you.
I'm very blown away by that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been good. It's been a lot of fun. And it's been, it's a very strong group of 13 people.
Yeah. So that this is going to happen. You already have these people. They put their money where their mouth is. They're behind it. And so, so for those of you who want to jump on board, it's time to get on the train.
Yeah. And so Adam Back was the first investor. And that was really cool. And the 20 investors plus me, we will be 21. And the group will be called as the 21 Feathered Serpents. The Feathered Serpent is also known as Quetzalcoatl or Cucuclan or Viracocha. Even here in El Salvador, if you go to ruins, there will be mentions of this feathered serpent. And even in Egypt, that was Osiris, same deal. And the Feathered Serpent was known to bring these ancient civilizations peace and civilization, taught them where to hunt, where to farm, how to build architecture. And so my thesis is that's what people needed most back then, but what people need most now is Bitcoin. It's sound money. And so me and our and my investors, we have an opportunity to be the modern day Feathered Serpents, to bring peace and civilization to places all around the world through bringing Bitcoin. So yeah, anybody out there who has the means and interest, please reach out. Definitely, it's helpful. I need to fill it before I can finish the film. And so it would be very helpful and much appreciated. You can, find me on Twitter at Bitcoin Shooter, Telegram at Bitcoin Shooter. You can shoot me a message, and I got a pitch deck, and I can share that with you. But yeah, that would be much appreciated if there's anybody out there.
No. If you believe in Bitcoin, what's happening here, make sure you get behind Shooter in this. I think that, it's the power of film to tell stories and to put into real tangible visual for people the things that they've been feeling. Like that, I think, is what brings them to understand why Bitcoin's important to them. Because a lot of people think, well, I'm not really into finance, or so Bitcoin's not really important to me. It's like, no, you're into living life. And if you're living life with fiat money, it's really impacting everything that you do. And that's why you don't have enough time to spend with your kids, because you're working that second job to try to just keep food on the table. So right. So this is an exciting thing for them to be a part of. So.
Yeah, it is just living. Yeah, I mean, you trade your time for money. Most of us at least, and yeah, your time is essentially getting stolen, right? If eggs cost you a certain amount of dollars, they cost you maybe, a dozen eggs maybe cost you 6 minutes 2 years ago, of your work time. Maybe it costs you 10 minutes now. And so, yeah, your time is just getting eaten away. And yeah, film, in my opinion, is the most powerful art form, medium. You get to take over people's eyeballs, their ears. You get to use music for emotions. And books are great, but it's a bit more of an ask to ask someone to read a book. It takes a bit more time and some is less entertaining. But with a film, it can be very entertaining. You can get a lot of information across in just 90 minutes. And it's so scalable. I mean, it's so shareable. It's everybody's got a phone now. And so anybody could really watch it. So yeah, I think film is the best way to trip people down the rabbit hole and spark that interest. And then all the content's ready for them. Like, the Bitcoin Standard, everything divided by 21 million, all the podcasts, that I researched so that I could grab that knowledge. It's there. They just need to get pushed over a little bit. And I think film is the best way to do that.
So switching gears a little bit, I'm curious, as you were out, looking at these countries that are in varying degrees of really spiraling downward, how that contrasted and what you've seen in El Salvador doing the comeback country, film that you put together here. I don't know if you noticed any interesting contrast of a country that has embraced Bitcoin versus others that are just printing money as fast as they can.
Absolutely. I haven't been to a place like El Salvador in that respect. Kenya and Africa in general is very exciting because it seems like that missing puzzle piece to get people energy is happening. And in Kenya, people had a very good attitude. So I think they're going to do well. Remind me a lot of Salvadorans, tough life, hard life, but smiling and very friendly and really ready to work hard. So hopefully Kenya with energy starts to grow, and also they embrace Bitcoin. But no, El Salvador is obviously special, and it's special for two reasons, and they kind of intertwine. It's hard for me to pull them apart, but of course it's the increase of safety, and it's Bitcoin, and the increase in safety, I think, just brought this unexpected hope on an entire population in the country and out of the country. And just like those people in Kenya that got electricity and their lives changed like drastically so quickly, they're going to be very happy. Very, very, very happy, even if they're dirt poor, And I think the same thing happened here in El Salvador. That created this sense of hope and this sense of, okay, I can invest in a business for my family to run in El Salvador without worrying about the gangs, because that you could put them in danger if you actually started a business, right?
Oh, I knew lots of people who started little businesses, and once they started doing well, they came after their families, so they shut them down. They're like, I'd rather just make minimum wage than put my family in harm's way.
So there's that. You can do that now. You can buy property. You can consider retiring here. That is amazing. Like I tell people, because to be honest with you, most places in El Salvador, right, outside of El Zonte and outside of Berlin now, Bitcoin's not very well accepted everywhere, and people have mixed feelings about it. And some people think Bukele invented Bitcoin, there's all these weird things going on out there. So I think in general, most people in El Salvador are happy about the safety and happy to walk at night and invest in their own country. So that's very important. When I come here, I feel that. It's palpable, the hope. I feel like I get in an electromagnetic field of energy, and it just feels good. You can tell. But the Bitcoin thing is also really important because, again, without Bitcoin, I would have never come here, and a lot of people wouldn't have come here.
Well, most of the world still wouldn't know where El Salvador was on the map. They'd be confusing it with Ecuador.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what people don't realize. Like El Salvador is a small, really inconsequential country in the bigger scheme of things 5 years ago, but now it's the country that the U.S. government's worried about because they're leading the way and showing how Bitcoin adoption can really bring financial freedom to people. And so it's amazing to see that, like, everywhere I travel, when I talk to people about where I live, Uber drivers usually, they're like, oh, El Salvador. They're like, Bukele, Bitcoin. I mean, they know where it is. Where, 5 years ago, they're like, outside of like Central America, nobody even knew where El Salvador was. So
that's fascinating.
It's weird too, seeing the number of expats from around the world that are streaming in here. A lot of times never even visiting first, but they sold everything and are coming here because they just have a sense of this is the best place to build a future for their kids.
It's really becoming the freedom country. Okay, a couple of things. I met a German couple that they wanted to flee Germany because they saw how bad it was getting. They sold all their assets and had a really hard time getting it out of the country. And they realized the only way to do it would be with Bitcoin. And so it had a hard time doing that too, but they finally did. And they even had to sign a document saying, we promise with the bank, we promise we won't buy Bitcoin with this money, okay? They did, and they bought it on an exchange, KYC, so they fled the country to make sure that they weren't going to get it. So they bounced around a little bit, but ultimately ended up in El Salvador because they didn't want to have problems with Bitcoin in any country they went to because they're all into Bitcoin now, So that brought them here, that sense of freedom. And in El Zonte, right? This is my 4th time here. I came here for the first time 2 years ago. Every time I come to El Zonte, it is drastically different. The first time I came here, the hotel owner that I stayed at Palo Verde was asking me, dude, is this the place that Bitcoiners come? Is this like here in El Zonte? I'm like, yeah, dude, like this is it. How do you not, I don't understand. Like you're not getting this action or what, And the next year I came back, his staff was like double or triple. And like, it was obvious.
And they all knew how to take Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And it was obvious that Bitcoiners were there, And now I see they're running meetups there all the time. And the road to the hotel is paved. Like, it was really rough before, right? Rocks and dirt and bumpy and everything. And to see it paved, and the lot next door was empty, and now it's got like one of the most beautiful houses I've seen in a long time. That I don't know what you want to call it, but
the roof line and
the roof is like a wave, and the glass is facing the ocean. It's got that net that usually you lay on boats, and it's like up on the 2nd floor. It's beautiful. It's real, like architecture, real architecture, and it's just, man, it's so Bitcoin, Like that's the only place I'm going to see stuff like this. So I think El Zonte and the improvements that it's made, and if you've come to El Zonte and you've come back to El Zonte, those improvements are a reflection of how powerful Bitcoin can be in a community. And that leads me into Berlin, which is happening on the other side of the country, which is aiming to be the first mountain city, Bitcoin mountain city in El Salvador. And I spent a day there, and it's incredible. 80 merchants accepting Bitcoin, the merchants that don't have a friend that will accept it and give them cash. And they have so many shops that accept Bitcoin now that all of the basics are covered. So before, these merchants used to cash their Bitcoin out for dollars, but now they don't because they can just
spend
use
it somewhere else.
It's just money. They realize, oh, this is just money. And so that is their motivating factor there. They're telling the people in Berlin, look at what's happening in El Zonte. We are in Bitcoin country. We can be the second circular economy, and we can have people come here and share their culture and share their money and help us grow. And people are on board, and Bitcoiners are moving there and helping, and they're painting, and they're educating, and they're orange pilling. Like, we were going to lunch, and like no one shows up at the same time because someone's like, oh, sorry, be there in a second. Orange pilling, this guy over here. And so, yeah, the safety is very important, but the Bitcoin is something that other countries need to understand, that if you're friendly to it, you're going to bring in a lot of affluent, smart, talented, hardworking people. Because for whatever reason, that's what Bitcoiners are these days. Like it seems like if you're
community minded too, they want to improve the area.
Exactly, not just take advantage. And and maybe Bitcoiners are like that because you have to learn a lot to fully appreciate Bitcoin. Yeah. So you have to be the kind of person that does that, and that's who Bitcoiners are. We are these crazy people that'll spend thousands of hours studying stuff that we can fully understand, and in a weird way, doing things for the community. But also like for yourself, it's strange. It's not communism. It's absolutely not communism, but somehow we all still ultimately have we're very close to that internal natural thing in humans to help other people. So
no, I'm very bullish on Berlin. I think it ticks a lot of the boxes especially for a lot of expat Bitcoiners that are coming in. They don't want to live in a big city. They don't necessarily want to live on the coast where it's kind of hot and humid. They want this kind of picturesque mountain town, and the cost of living is a lot lower there also. So I feel like it's going to have a continued pull. But I love the fact that it wasn't done by expats from the start. It was from people in the community that saw this as an opportunity, or embracing it, and are welcoming people to come in. But it's the Salvadorans that are the ones that are driving it.
And fascinatingly, the ones that are driving it actually were from San Miguel, which is an hour away. For the first 2 months, they were driving every day, 5 days a week, into Berlin early in the morning, orange pilling, and then going back to San Miguel. They picked Berlin because of that tight-knit community. It's 20,000 people. They get together every Sunday in the park, in the center of the town. Vendors come out and everything. So they like that. And they really went above and beyond. They did not get paid to do it. They could not work while they were doing it. They went through their savings to do it. And still, they're not making money they're making money in other ways. Everybody is volunteering over there. So it's great. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm really excited for Berlin and the people of Berlin. And for Bitcoiners that are coming to El Salvador, if you have time, if you can get to Berlin, get to Berlin. Because again, what these people are being told is that if we make this Bitcoin friendly, Bitcoiners will come. So when I come and I wear a Bitcoin hat and I wear a Bitcoin shirt and I'm carrying around a nice camera and I'm flying a drone, these people are like, whoa, okay, people are coming. These people are right. So if you can spend some time there, you can help educate people. You can paint. They're setting up their center now for the first time. Even if you can only go for a day or two, just being there, being present, spending a little bit of Bitcoin, it's going to help push that whole community along. So I would definitely encourage any Bitcoiners that can do it, make a trip out to Berlin, see what it's like over there. The people are incredible. Evelyn and Gerardo working over there, and Charlie and all the other people that are working there, Nikki and James, a bunch of Bitcoiners. They're doing amazing work, and that's how you can support them. Just go and have a great time.
And if you're curious about Berlin, and we did 2 shows on Berlin, just a few shows back. So if you want to learn, if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to that. All the amazing things they have going on. It was fun for me to be like, wow, you guys are doing this and that, and we have this kind of swing for the fences goal. We want to find a place to build like a giant Bitcoin bee, somewhere in Berlin that can be the place everybody comes and takes their selfie in front of, and becomes one of those world famous landmarks that everybody has to go to. So we're we have that in the back of our head right now.
I like it. B for Bitcoin, B for Berlin. It's perfect. Yep. Absolutely perfect.
Definitely.
Right on, man.
So, well, if people want to get one of those 20 spots, they just hit you up on Twitter. Is that the best way?
Yeah, Twitter or Telegram. I also have a website for it going, which is 21fs.tv. FS as in feathered serpent. So 21fs.tv. And you get the spiel there. But yeah, if not, reach out. We can talk and, talk them through what's going on. And it definitely would be helpful. Of course, finances are needed to do this. And it would be very, very helpful.
And the ComeBack Country, the best place to find that is just on your Twitter, or where?
You can find it on Twitter. You can also go to comebackcountry.com.
Okay.
And it'll take you right there.
Sweet. Did we miss anything? Have we covered it all?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think we got it, man. Right. We didn't go through all the slides, but it was cool. I think it was cool anyway.
I told you I'm bad with the slides sometimes.
No, me too. We were flowing.
I get rolling, and I forget we have props.
No, we were flowing. I think it was good. Yeah, awesome. No, it was great, man. Dude, really, thank you for having me here. And I can't imagine how you feel. I know you were a big part of the reason why all this stuff sparked. You and Chimbera and Jorge and the guys here, and of course Jack Mahlers and the president, but it's everybody had their little thing to do. So mad respect to you. obviously, like we just talked about the impact that Bitcoin is having here, and you're a big part of that. So
Just
respect,
along for the
man.
ride. It's been a fun one.
Yes, absolutely, man.
But
Respect.
thank you. When are you hoping to have the film out? I know those things are kind of rolling aspirational dates, but what are you thinking?
The goal is the halving.
Okay.
I think I can get it done by then. But
wow, that's quick.
What's been happening is as I've been filming more and putting more stuff together, bigger names that I've been approaching have been coming through. So I interviewed Dr. Robert Malone about how money affects science. And I just recently interviewed Graham Hancock, who is the writer of Fingerprints of the Gods and the presenter of Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. He wrote a book in 1989 called The Lords of Poverty about the World Bank and the IMF and the aid organization. And so the only way the deadline would get pushed is if someone big comes out of the woodwork, like a Tucker Carlson or like a President Bukele. Hopefully one day I can interview him.
Well, I've been told he occasionally listens to this podcast. So Bukele, if you're out there listening, you need to do an interview as part of this movie.
Yes, that would be fantastic. It would be an honor.
All right. Well, we'll push and see if we can make that happen.
All
Are you gonna come to the halving party in El Salvador then? Can we debut the movie there? Or?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. It's a little too far away to like commit because when things get rolling and when you start editing, it's like I'll be in a cave. I've never edited a 90-minute piece. And typically I'm editing for a week for like a little 2-minute thing. But this is a whole other beast. So I'll probably be in a cave for a month or two. But yes, absolutely. If the film is done, I wouldn't be anywhere else for the halving than here. Where else would you want to be, right?
Did we put up your Twitter handle? Make sure people are following you on Twitter so they can stay up on what was it? Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, at Bitcoin Shooter. It's easy.
Bitcoin Shooter.
Like shoot like film. Shoot film.
Right. Perfect.
Right on.
Well, let's have you back on when the movie's out.
Love it. Would love it.
Thanks, Shooter.
Thanks, Mike.